Everybody should know that Molly Fine, who was just speaking, is running IDCTA, and we thank her for all her help today in getting this presentation together. So thanks, Molly. So I'm going to introduce first myself. My name is Amy Barrett. I'm a member of IDCTA, and I also participate on the eventing committee. And this whole program came about because I've been riding since I was 8, and I was very fortunate to hop on ponies when I was young and run around the countryside, and in the process develop a lot of fun for being out in the country and a good seat. And today I see a lot of riders, and they're just used to going around and around in circles. Even eventers, they get onto a course and they may jump a little bit, but hunting is so very different. You're there with nature, and there's rules and protocol, and it's just sort of a beautiful sport. So with that said, I have two wonderful people here today. I'm going to introduce Keith Gray. He is one of the masters of Mill Creek Hunt. And to support Keith's love of horses, he owns and runs a natural area restoration company called ILM Environments. For over 30 years, Keith has helped clients care for water and land, making the world a healthier and more aesthetic place. Keith started riding, I think, a relatively older age of 37, but at the same time, he got into it. Well, he just jumped in with both feet. He participated in his first fox hunt as a guest in Mill Creek. And over the years, he shared that he's made every mistake regarding horses, including bad purchases, riding technique, trailering, and feeding. And despite this, and with his positive attitude, he shared that all these mistakes were just learning opportunities. In 2007, Keith was honored to be nominated as Master Mill Creek Hunt, and he continues in that role today. In addition, I've seen Keith compete at local eventing competitions, and also he is a very active polo player. So one of the most important things he said and shared is his long-term goal is to perpetuate fox hunting and introduce the next generation to it. We also have on this Brenda Yost. It's very special that she's here. Brenda's love of horses led her to attend UW River Falls to study agriculture with an emphasis in equine studies. She received her Bachelor of Science in 1990. Following school, Brenda began grooming for the Mill Creek Hunt stables. The next year, she upped her game by managing the stables. A few years later, Brenda became a professional whip as well as manager of the stables. And not to be undone, she kept going. So in 1995, her love of horses and a hunt led her to become a professional huntsman with a club. And 11 years ago, she completed the Master of Foxhound Association Professional Development Program. In addition to working with Mill Creek, Brenda is a proud owner and trainer of Millgate Equestrian, where she offers boarding, training, and dressage, eventing, and fox hunting. And believe it or not, she was hunting her 4th level dressage horse just a couple weeks ago. And maybe this week, I don't know, Brenda, which one you were on. But thanks to both of you for being here tonight. So the agenda, we have a general agenda. I'm going to turn it over to Keith. And we're going to try to answer some of the questions about basic hunting. Just as a way of background, Mill Creek Hunt began as Onwensia Club based in Lake Forest in 1897. So it's been around a long time. And in 1930, the club changed its name to Mill Creek Hunt. And they have the great fortune, and the landowners are wonderful, to allow them to hunt on the Temple Farm property. And it is a gorgeous piece of property, has rolling hills, farmland, forest, and small streams. Mill Creek is steeped in a rich, rich history. And for those not familiar, let's begin and talk about some of the participants' roles. So Keith and Brenda, could you describe the role of master?
Yeah, I'll take that one, Brenda, if that's all right. So the master of the fox hunt is kind of like the president of the club. By the way, thank you for having us. And Molly, thank you very much. As you mentioned, it's important to me to share the sport with other folks. And tonight, that's what I'm trying to do. So I really appreciate the opportunity. But yeah, the master of the hunt or the master of the foxhounds is just a funny name for the president of the club. And there are some clubs who are singularly run by a master, and they don't really require participation of anybody. It's somebody who loves hunting, and he may invite his friends to join him, and all decisions are made by that person, that master. Now, there are some clubs that are called subscription packs, and they vote for a master every so often, maybe every 2 years or 4 years, and they might have multiple masters, the leader of the club. And that's a little different governance because they elect these people and things are done more by committee. But there's every hunt would have what's called a master, and really it's the leader, whether it be singularly or nominated by the membership.
Okay, and then Brenda, what's the role of a huntsman?
Well, my job is to breed and train the pack, and of course hunt them on a given day, and also the daily, work of keeping the kennels, clean and organized. I do most of the medical treatments right in the kennel, and also oversee that the country is maintained and cleared, ready for a hunting day.
Great. And then there's another key player in all of this, the kennelman. So you're very fortunate to have somebody that's been with you for a while. Do you want to talk about that, Keith?
Yeah, well, I'll let Brenda talk about that because he
Okay.
reports to her, and you're right, he's done a fabulous job.
Yeah, no, Juan Mandujano's been with us for well over 18 years now. And he, of course, assists me with all that. He does the daily kennel cleaning and most of the trail clearing under both the guidance of Keith and I, and maintenance of jumps and all that. And yeah, it's, I guess, my right-hand man. Yeah, the hounds have a great rapport. He has a great rapport with the hounds. And that's real important because he assists me on our daily walks out. And that's where most of the training and some of the conditioning is done with the pack.
And then there's another role that is really important. It's called the whipper in. Does anyone want to tackle that one?
I guess I'll take that one because I am an honorary whipper in. The whipper in whipper ins, in many cases, there's multiple, are the riders who really ride on the periphery of the hunt. The hunt is really Brenda and the pack, and Brenda and the pack are out looking for a lion, a coyote, or a fox, and the field is following them, observing and enjoying the ride and the trip. But on the periphery of all that activity are the whipper-ins, and their job is multi-leveled, really, and quickly it's to really protect the hounds from traffic. If game runs across the road, our job would be to maybe turn the game around or at least stop traffic so the hounds can cross, or possibly stop the hounds. And there are situations when any one of those three things are warranted. As you might imagine, and we're talking to horse people, it takes a very special horse to be next to a road with busy traffic, yelling and screaming, and hounds are all excited, and to do what I wanted to do. And I think about eventing and all the hoopla that goes on in an event, and there's a loudspeaker and there's plenty of people and sometimes dogs. The eventing world and the fox hunting world are very closely related. And again, we're thrilled to be able to share this with you guys. Whipper in also is making sure that the hounds aren't running something they shouldn't be running. A young hound might want to follow a deer for a while. Our job is to knock them off of that and get them back with the pack. Or a raccoon, sometimes a skunk. But by and large, the hounds figure it out pretty quickly, and they stay with the game they're destined to stay with. Brenda, you want to add to that on how maybe we count hounds or go pull a hound out of a hole or whatever?
Yeah, no, and I often describe it as I'm the coach to the team, the hound's a team, and the whips are my assistant coaches. But yeah, I will utilize them, if we're like Keith just explained a little bit, trying to get them out of sometimes they'll find a big one as a possum in a tree trunk and we just can't get the hounds off. It helps to send a whip in so they can chase them off, and then I can call them to me because it's hard for me to ask them to leave. There's no one for them to go to, because I'm kind of in the center of what they're going to look for. And the whips really help, keep us on the correct quarry and keep everything safe.
And then there's another, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to explain what Keith was saying. When we count the hounds, we count them in couples. And that's an important role for the whips whenever they come up to the pack or see me in the pack or the pack cross a road, that we count them quickly and we count them. It's easier to count a pair than 1, 2, 3, so we count them by pairs and we call them couples. And that's another thing, is making sure that the whole pack is with us at any given time. So nothing's left, behind on its own for safety. And again, to keep them with everything correct.
And there are some pauses along the hunt in order to make sure that all the hounds, it's really a break for everybody too, but just to make sure all the hounds have gathered, or to actually find the 1 or 2 that have disappeared.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll stop and
Oh, go ahead, Brenda.
I was gonna say we'll stop and collect hounds. And so it'll be a moment if I think I haven't seen for a while or hear from a whip that one isn't with us, I will stop and with my horn of voice call the hounds to me. And then that's an opportunity, yes, for break for everything, but also for us to really count to make sure we have all the hounds, especially this early in the season when we've got some young ones out. We want to make sure they get a chance, that they're not left behind, but get a chance to be there when we do find the right quarry to do the right thing.
Amy, you mentioned, a check, right? We're running, we might be jumping, we're going through creeks, and there's a herd mentality. And some horses adapt to it better than others, but there's kind of a funny saying in fox hunting, the most important gait your horse has is standing still. There's nothing more miserable at a check than to have a horse who wants to go, he's spinning around, he might step on a hound inadvertently. It's really important that your horse is able to do what we ask them to do, but it's also really important that they're able to stand still and just kind of, pause until we collect and move off again.
And then there's another player who's actually very important, is actual landowners. So the hunt has been very blessed to have good landowners. Maybe you want to talk about that.
Yeah, I guess we could both talk about that. I'll start by saying, the Temple Smith family owns the 90+% of where we hunt. They're hunters also, not fox hunters, but they hunt deer and obviously they ride. They're very, very kind and very generous. And in all clubs, and there's about 130 clubs in the United States, many of them have challenges with landowners. You get, a very large hunt, what we call a hunt country, cobbling together a bunch of individual landowners, and boy, it couldn't be better. But if somebody dies or sells the farm and the next person comes in and for whatever reason doesn't want the hunters running through, boy, that's really hard to have a hunt with a section in the middle of your country where you can't go. And so maintaining relations with landowners is an incredibly important part of a master's job. Brenda, you want to talk about maintenance of the country?
Well, and that's, again, back to the trail clearing. And, that's a bit of a service to the landowners, that they appreciate it. It helps keep it clear so they can get around as well as us on the given day. And I hold a great respect to the Temple family, and anything we do, we clear with them ahead of time, and make sure that everything's to what they want done.
The Wayne DuPage hunt, which is a drag hunt, and the difference between a drag hunt and a live hunt, of course, is we're hunting a live animal, and a drag hunt is where they lay a scent and follow that scent. There's no live hunting. But the Wayne DuPage hunt hunts in the DuPage County Forest Preserve. That's their landowner. And they have an incredible relationship with them, where hunt members go out and improve the land. And in my business is natural area management, but they'll go and fix creek crossings so there's no erosion. They actually got an award, a national award with money attached to it, for the conservation work they did for their landowners. So Sometimes it's individual people, sometimes it's a timber company, sometimes it's the federal government or the county forest preserve. It could be a variety of all those things. And fox hunters are always looking for large tracts of land. And if anybody out there in the audience knows of those and are interested in having a hunt there, let us know, please.
And there's one other party I think that's very important is the actual members. Because there's a lot of work. It's an organization, it's volunteer, many parts, many of the jobs. And so, Keith, maybe you talk about the members and what they do and roles and responsibilities.
Yeah, it really does take a village in this case to make this go. So Juan is our kennelman, and he's terrific. We love him, but Juan can't work 7 days a week. So there are periods, he goes on vacation or he's ill, or he even gets a day off once in a while, where other people have to fill in. And you can't just say, oh, I'm going to do kennels. There is a process to learn about feeding, medicating, keeping them separated, disinfecting, all those things. And so we rely on members to pitch in and do that. When we're clearing trails before the season starts, we want Juan out on the trails, out on the tractor. So for those couple of weeks, he doesn't do kennels at all. And we're asking members to pitch in. We have breakfasts before a hunt. We have luncheons after. Those are provided by club members. Somebody comes in and washes a window in the club room. Again, club members. So, there's a variety of things club members do. Some clubs require so many hours. I know your organization requires service hours. And some don't, but without the help of volunteers there, it would be impossible to do, really, without a very, very large budget.
Great. Molly, should we stop and pause for questions around this roles or move on to talk about the foxhounds?
I think you should open it up for questions if anybody has any about the roles.
So logistically, just unmute and ask.
Exactly. We just got a few more people coming on too, so.
So I'll ask, does anybody have any questions about the different roles of the hunt? Okay, didn't hear any questions, so let's move on. So one of the most important aspects of the hunt is actually the hounds. And some people say that's the reason why we're here. So maybe Brenda, you want to run with this? We want maybe talk for a few minutes about the breeding, the training, the actual hunting and the scenting. Okay.
Well, in our pack here, I keep about 20 couple of hounds. So that's 40 hounds in the kennel. And we have it's called a crossbred pack, which is a mixture of the English and American. English hounds would be the traditional hound that you would see over in Europe. They are very biddable, very easy to handle, which works out well for our tight country. Some people could say they may be a little slower. The American hound it's a little longer legged. They call it deeper scenting. They can smell in the drier conditions, and they were traditionally bred to be a little more independent when they were first brought over here, with the early settlers, because they were dealing with more hilly country, more wooded country, so they would hunt more on their own. So we like a mix of both to try to bring the best of the both worlds, kind of crossing your thoroughbred to your quarter horses. I like to, equal it to. So, that's about our breeding program. I've been breeding these hounds now for 25 years now. So it's kind of morphed. We had a really, really strong fast pack, probably about 18, 20 years ago, but it was a little too fast. We were up in Wisconsin. We were in Gurney Mills, we were at Home Depot, so we had to back off a little bit. So I've kind of breed a very thick type hound. In essence, I'm slowing them down by their sheer size. And then I still have the drive for them to hunt and the workability with them. So that's just worked for us. The training, it's really something that happens on a day-to-day basis. One thing it goes back to, we don't actually work to catch a quarry, but they say that the hunting day is made in the kennel, and that's the day-to-day routine. Like I said, Juan and I walk out, every single day, and it's while we're on the walk that we're teaching them to come, when they're called to stay handy and to not chase, we walk past a neighbor's dog or, anything that we see, animals that we see walking out, not to follow those. That's where most of the training is actually done. Then on the hunting day, we really hope to let instinct take place. Young hounds will learn from the older hounds. One question I get a lot is how do I, there's people are surprised I know all their names. Well, I've got 40 hounds. Some of them I've had for, 7, 8 years. So it's not like I'm learning all 40 every year. I say it's no different than a classroom of school children, but it's even easier because they don't change clothes and cut their hair, So, and they do all they do all know their name. They do all respond to it. And that comes from that day-to-day handling. For the month of July, we go on hound exercise. And that's every day 6 days a week, we go out on horseback. And that helps the young hounds get used to the horses. It also helps any young horses get used to the hounds. But that's where we get the hounds and horses all fit, ready for the hunt season. And there's again where another step to the whole training process. Then on a hunting day, we just kind of, let them go and hope the young ones just learn to stay with the old ones. I've got a really nice young puppy that was really, we've got tracking collars now. We could see he was really kind of bouncing around the country. We've had a slow start, so he's going to sit back for a while till I can get the rest of the pack real settled and get enough quarry going. Then we'll try him again, and hopefully he'll realize what he's out there for and settle down a little bit. So those are just a few different ways, that we'll work with them.
Great. Keith, anything to add to that topic?
Yeah, it's funny. Brenda makes it sound easy. It's much harder than it sounds, because when they're out on walks, understand walking out hounds doesn't mean you're taking them out on a leash one at a time. She's going out with 40 hounds unleashed, and she's on foot. And so it has happened where when the hounds are being walked, a deer will run through, my God, a coyote, God forbid, be up ahead. And those hounds want to go. And it's where, as Brenda said, the training is really done there. And it's teaching them to listen. Now, you get it on Sunday morning, you get on your horse, you bring these hounds out, you want them to behave just like that until you get to the cast. And when Brenda casts the hounds, it's like, okay, now you're out hunting. You don't have to stay with me, and you don't really have to worry about, staying in the group. And it's amazing to me, even now, after all this time, how they can flip that switch. We'll go right up Hunt Club Road. The speed limit's 50 miles an hour. Our hounds are in a nice pack. They're following Brenda, and she can pull 100 yards off the road and give the signal, and these guys go find a coyote. It really is truly amazing.
Great. So that's what we have on the foxhounds. Does anybody have any questions? Just unmute yourself and ask away.
I have a quick question, not related to the hounds, but maybe you were going to talk about this later. I'm really fascinated by the color coding of jackets and the specific attire that everybody has to wear at the different points of the hunt.
Denise, you're perfect. That is our next topic.
Awesome.
That's what we're going to talk about right now.
Okay, good. That was a good segue.
Thank you for that segue. Okay, rider attire and rules for hunting. What to wear, what not to wear, and how to dress your horse.
Well, Brenda, you should handle that, because as in my intro, it's very clear that I have broken every rule of fox hunting. And gratefully, there's been patient people along the way. Brenda being one of them for sure. And I'll let her field that one.
Could I ask a question before? This is Molly. Do you have pictures that you might be able to intersperse here?
If you want to cue up that PowerPoint,
Okay.
you can maybe fast forward to some of that.
I just thought it would be interesting to see that as you're describing, as Brenda's describing I saw a bunch of them in that PowerPoint that you had up a few minutes ago.
Keith, this is yours. Oh, I need to share. Hold on, everybody.
I'm gonna have to ask you just to fast forward until Brenda says stop.
Okay.
Where you got to a picture that she likes. So yeah, you can't really see that one very well. But Brenda, just yell stop when they hit a picture that helps you.
All right.
You can keep going, but right, these are a bunch of historic, and it was interesting that one of the main fox hunters in history was George Washington. Um, and this is at our puppy show that we have each year. This is a hound show.
That's Keith.
Is that
And
me?
Yes,
who's with Keith?
That's Rick Golding. He was a longtime member that retired just a few years ago from fox hunting.
This is a good picture. It gives you some of the landscape.
Yeah.
You might want to go back to that picture of Rick Golding and myself, and Brenda, you could talk about maybe the gentlemen's jackets and the tack that we have on the horses.
So they would be dressed as a gentleman with colors as they would. It'd be the red coat, it'd be the white breeches. And this would be a formal day, you know, when it's what, you know, we have our fall hunting season, and then we have we just had at our opening meet, we call it, the Blessing of the Hounds, was just yesterday. Anyway, and from there on weekends or Sunday hunts, we would wear our formal attire. So I don't know if you can see that the red coat, they have blue color with the yellow piping on the collars. That is kind of like our team colors. That's our hunt colors. And they will have brass buttons with the MCH logo on. The interesting thing about the boots, the brown boots have tan tops that goes with the formal attire for the gentleman. And that comes from the old cavalry days where the boots went up over the knees. Well, that was a bit cumbersome out hunting for the long days, so they would just turn the tops down. And we just retain that as part of the tradition. Years ago, would be a top hat was proper attire for a gentleman in the field, and you would only see a hunt cap on the hunt servant, a staff member, the huntsman or the whipper-ins. But with today, pretty much when I started, they started morphing from there about 30 years ago and accepting the hunt caps for everybody because it was a much safer headgear to be wearing. So that, oh, and then the stock tie, it's a white stock tie that you should wear, you know, with the formal attire. And traditionally it'd be brown leather or white string gloves as well. And then the
Brenda,
tack
go
on the
ahead.
horses. I'm sorry, Keith, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, saddles. I'm sure everybody has an eventing saddle, and because you also event, you know, talk a little bit about the differences in saddles.
Well, you want a traditional jumping saddle, you know, you want to be out there in a dressage saddle with the longer stirrup, you know, and ideally it's brown leather, what's acceptable, a flat brown bridle. But again, any of this stuff is the ideal. We welcome anybody. If you don't have the brown, a flat bridle, that's fine, you know, it's all, you know, tidy and, you know, understated. We don't do a lot of the bling, you know, with the brow bands. You know, it's just kind of, I was told when I started, it's like you don't want to be noticed in the hunt field. And that means you're well attired, you fit in, you have a nice quiet horse that, you know, it is fun for you to enjoy for the day.
So I have a question. The regular hunters they can wear other stuff besides red, right? Like
Well, the red coat is on formal days if you have your colors. If you haven't earned, now your colors are earned by being a substantial member of the club. If you don't have your colors, it'd be regular show attire. It would be just, you wouldn't have the brown tops, it'd be tan breeches, it'd be a black coat. The white stock tie would still be required for a formal season.
There's
Yeah,
a picture there.
Yeah.
So this, I can't see the whole, oh, there, yeah, this is how a lady would dress for their colors. These are Keith's daughters, and they would wear a black or navy coat and tan breeches, and they would not have the brown pattern, but they would have a black pattern top on the top of their boots. They had their colors.
Mhm.
And one thing we can't see with the coats is canary vest is also traditionally part of the full scheme, and which is nice to have when the cooler late fall and early winter hunt days.
There is a lot of old tradition that people don't let go of. And Brenda, talk a little bit about when you 25 years ago, and it was really right before I got there, you became the huntsman. And the roaring debate at that point was whether or not to allow a lady to wear a red coat, red or pink. Now masters, female masters or female huntsmen, it's not at all unusual to wear the red coat. But when you became a huntsman, and you're one of the few women huntsmen at that time, there was a real debate about whether you should wear the red, right?
There was, and there was a lovely older member, Pat Harding, was in her 80s. I think she was 80, 85 when I took over the pack. And when I mentioned they actually did not want me to wear a red coat. She said, "That's silly, you're the huntsman. How are we going to see you?" And it does make me certainly much more visible, you know, as far as where's the huntsman with the hounds. There's no doubt about that. So she stepped in, and nobody wanted to, you know, tell somebody their senior who'd been around for so long, you know, otherwise. So they did decide that, yes, it made sense as a professional huntsman that I should be allowed to wear red.
But women in the field would not wear a red coat.
And
Yeah,
then
no.
maybe talk about informal. The
So for
Wednesdays.
informal days, yeah, that's fall hunting and Wednesday. So for fall hunting, for informal, you can wear a regular rat catcher shirt, which would be the collared shirt, or like the gentleman would wear a regular shirt with just a tie, and then it would be a plaid or tweed coat. And then Wednesdays after the opening meet for formal season, it's still a tweed or plaid coat is acceptable, but it's still a stock tie. And that's where some of the ladies have a lot of fun with different colored stock ties and different prints. And regular black show attire, you know, a black coat or navy coat is always acceptable.
And then a little bit about dressing your horse. You talked about this saddle, a white saddle pad that fits the saddle.
Yep, a white fitted saddle pad, not square, is, you know, the fitted is more contoured, I guess, is more acceptable. You know, we talked about the bridle, you know, what bit you need out hunting. I like to say I school in a snaffle, I put what I need out hunting and go back and apologize with my snaffle the next day, you know. So, you know, make sure you have what you need to have the appropriate breaks. Martingales used to be traditionally, it was just standing, but I use a running myself. So running or standing martingale is acceptable. Breastplate if you need it to keep your saddle from slipping. We don't have a lot of hills to worry about, but that can be important in hill country. I'll say one thing about boots. I see some people come out in boots on their horses. I find it more of an issue if any mud or sticks or anything debris get under the boot, as well as if it is really wet and muddy. Those boots can hold a lot of weight on the horses, you know, when you're out there for a couple hours. You know, that it's sometimes, you know, if your horse needs them, they need them, but sometimes that can cause more trouble than you're trying to save.
It's great.
Yeah, the way it was explained to me, it's simplicity, you know, and you want flat leather. You know, braided reins are great, but they hold a lot of dirt. You know, we're going through leaves and branches and mud and water. And if you're not in front, you know, a lot of that's getting kicked up on you. So, you know, if you really enjoy cleaning tack, then maybe all that fancy stuff is great, but having flat leather tack whenever you can makes cleaning far less a chore.
Okay, at this point, I think I'd like to open it up if anybody has any questions on rider attire or how they should dress their horse. So just unmute your Zoom and ask away. Okay, I don't think.
Excuse me.
I do. I
We
have one
do.
more.
Okay, go ahead, Denise.
Is it universal internationally? Are the hunt colors the same everywhere?
Great question. Wow, I like that one. No, there's some hunts in England where instead of the black coats, traditional black coats, they were green. And in France, I've seen blue. Now, almost, and Brenda, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe in America, the senior gentlemen wear the red coat, the women wear black, and that's in America. But in Europe, there are some variations to that, especially in France. And now they're not hunting fox or coyote in France. They're hunting stag, a smaller deer called roebuck, or wild boar. And so there's the same type of hunting, same horses, pretty much the same hounds, but there's huge diversity in what they'll wear color-wise and in the 3 different types of game they'll hunt.
So could you identify a rider's nationality by their color of their coat?
Or the cut of it. The French tend to wear much higher boots and much longer coats, at least in the region where I've hunted. So I can tell when someone's in America from France that it's a different, more than a color, it's a different cut.
And internationally, where would you say, what country has the most hunt clubs still practicing?
France, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, the latest statistic I heard is if you add up all the hunts in the world, aside from France, you still will not have as many hunts as what's in France.
Mm.
It's enormous there.
I have a question just to lead off from kind of that part is dark green acceptable, like forest green, or is that not Americanly acceptable?
I'll answer that for Mill Creek. I won't be able to answer that for other clubs. If it's a formal coat, I would, as a master, and someone said, is this okay? I would say at Mill Creek, it is fine. We've had military people come out who are on like military drill teams and wear their military uniforms while they hunted with us. It is not our colors. It's not our cut. And they are fine. They're acceptable for me.
Mm-hmm. Okay. No, I just asked because I have a green hunt coat that I used to use in New Zealand, and it's wool and nice and warm. And yeah.
I would say that would be okay.
Do you want to see horses platted, braided every hunt, or?
No, that's too much work for me. No, there was a point in time, and it was before I got there in 1997, where I think every Sunday they were braiding horses. But, it's really joint meets or special guests might be coming in. We had Lord Benjamin Bancroft from England hunt with us a couple years ago. The blessing of the hounds for sure. We're braiding. I think we used to braid on Thanksgiving, but because everybody's busy making turkeys, we kind of got away from that. So no, the short answer is there's only a handful of times during the season where braiding is required. Certainly if anybody wanted to do it, aside from that, they could.
Fantastic. Any more questions before we move on to hunt day field expectations and jumping versus non-jumping? Okay, so we've had a few questions. People have contacted me and Molly and said, well, it sounds like a great thing to do, but I just don't want to jump. So why don't we talk about what happens during a hunt day and the different fields and who can jump and who doesn't have to jump?
Well, I'll let Brenda talk about that one.
Okay, well, we actually offer 3 fields here at Mill Creek. So the first field, and each field does have a field master that leads the field, and we point that out at the meet before we move off so you know who you want to be following. And their jobs of the field master is to keep them up with the action, see what's going on, keep everybody safe, but also make sure I have room and space to do to do my work and not get in the way of the hounds. So the first field is run and jump and keep up. Now I'll say Mill Creek, we don't have a lot of livestock, so we don't have a lot of jumps because we don't, so we do have some, but it's more for entertainment. So even saying our jumping, I think our max fence is 3 foot. A lot of them are smaller logs and, different things that we have out there. So the first field will run and, jump and keep up. The second field will follow the first field, but find a way around the fences. So it's still moving at pace, but, they don't jump. Now, if you decide, start a day in either field, you can move. When we have a check, you can decide to move, but it's always proper and important that you let the field master know if you change fields, because they'll take note of how many riders they have behind them. And if some's missing, and that's another thing, you always want to make sure you tell the field master if you do choose to go in early, because other than we all worry about where did this person go. So we really do keep track of everybody that way. And then the third field will keep up at a walk or trot. And they'll kind of determine by the members of the field. We try to ride to the lowest denominator, but it's a walk trot field. If it's a group that wants to do a little canter.
I didn't hear him say where he went to college.
Somebody needs to get unmute. Thank you.
Where's Madison at? Working?
There's somebody who has got their mute off. Let me just see if I can figure out who it is. Because it's disrupting. August, if you don't have quiet behind you, please get muted. That's the only one I see. Okay, I think we're back.
Okay. Brenda, did you want to add some more?
I think that covered the fields if anyone has any questions.
So we had a question about how the hounds would interact with their horses. There was a concern that their horse might not be comfortable with the hounds, but I find that to be not a case, really.
Well, the hounds are, they will pass the horses and be around, but that's again the field master's job to keep the field of horses a safe distance, both for the field and for the hounds. So the hounds are up working, they're up 20, 30 feet ahead of the rest of the field, pretty much. Now, there are times where the hounds will pass the field, like if they're coming up from behind, and then it's kind of proper for everybody to they'll say hound left or hound right, and that means you better, just keep your eye out if there's a hound coming up the right side of your horse or the left side of your horse, it's to move your horse away. I like to say that's where dressage really helps in the hunt field, because you can just leg yield your horse to one side and it makes room for the hound. And sometimes a staff member will have to go by and they'll say staff right or staff left, and you just move your horse to the side so they make room. So the hounds, and the hounds, they don't mess with the horses at all. So, they're used to horses, and it's just part of their everyday life. So, their whole goal is to stay with me and go do their job. So I can't see that being a big issue.
So there was another question. Do you bring your own water, or is it available on the hunt?
Well, I'll answer that. Certainly you can bring your own water, and people will carry a bottle of water, or there are very elaborate flasks that you could put water or other beverages in if you wanted to. When it's hot, we have what's called a road whip. So I mentioned a whip is riding on the periphery, and a traditional whip is always on a horse. Well, because we have roads running through our country, we have somebody following in a pickup truck with a radio, with a crate on the back, should a hound come up lame and have to get picked up and driven home. And when it's hot, they'll have water in the truck. So at a check, if we're anywhere near the roads, there would be water available. But my recommendation, especially now with this time of year, you're riding hard, you're wearing a wool coat, and it's 78 degrees out. It would be really good to be hydrated before you leave.
Okay, and then there was a question, what happens if, and they said possibly me, falls off? Are there medical personnel available?
Well, funny, our second field master yesterday is an EMT. Some hunts require that somebody from the medical profession be available, whether they be in the truck with the road whip or out riding or whatever it is. If someone comes off, and it happens, we have to ascertain, the field master has to ascertain quickly if they're going to need assistance. They're supposed to get everybody away from that person. Everybody wants to help. Well, the last thing you need is a bunch of horses walking around, somebody laying on the ground. That's not going to end well. And so the field masters are pretty good at implementing established protocol in light of what's happened and to get the proper help as they need it. And, that's everything from somebody go catch their horse and someone's going to get back on and ride to, we're going to have to get this person near a road and call for a vehicle. So it's case by case, but we do the best we can to address issues out in the field safely.
So the one thing I want to point out is in each of the groups, there will be someone who's really in charge. And if you had an issue, let's say you're just can't sit in the saddle anymore and need to go back, there are ways and people around to help bring you back safely to the yard.
Yeah, it's, remember we started out talking about relationships with the landowners. So number one, a landowner understandably is worried about somebody, ripping up the hunt country or knocking down fences or getting hurt or whatever. They don't want that. And we don't want them to see anything that even looks like that. And so if somebody has a horse that's unruly, or maybe they're not ready to be hunting and they find themselves out in the middle of nowhere with us, we want to get them back safely. And so we will ask one of our members to escort somebody back because they know the way home, and not put on a show for the landowner that might be watching.
Okay, so I'd like to open it up to any questions. We've got about 10 minutes left. So let's try to do this orderly. Unmute and ask.
Do any of the riders wear protective vests?
Yes. Brenda, you want to talk about that?
Yes, quite a few do. Either just the old, the regular safety vests, and a lot of them now wear air vests. So yeah, that's totally acceptable, and we have quite a few members that do.
But remember to disconnect when you get off. There are hunt coats made now, very nice hunt coats that have the air vests built into them, and the seams are kind of Velcroed together. They're quite expensive, but it allows the riders to be very, very safe and have that traditional look if that's what they're after. I wear a Hit Air safety vest.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to know an idea of the mileage that we'd cover, just so I can make sure. I've never done this before, but it's on my bucket list of things to always do. So if I'm going to spend the next month and a half really training with my horse to make sure he's ready for this and I'm ready for it, how many miles should we be prepared to go? I'd probably just do it on the flat my first time. So like, what should be a good fitness level for my horse?
I can cover that. I think, I don't run GPS, but I've had some people that do while they're out there, and we can cover about, 15, 20 miles. But saying that, some days we're not galloping the whole time. We're out for about 2.5, 3 hours. And within that time, we'll be walking while the hounds are working. And then when they're really on the quarry is when we, step into the game. But, rarely, if we do get a gallop, it's probably a, 20, 30 minute, and it's not a full gallop. It's a, canter, check, wait, canter, move, stuff like that. So I guess I'd say if your horse is fit for a novice horse trial, that should be sufficient.
Yeah, I'll add to that. The other thing is, if you're tired or your horse is tired, you can always go in early. I've been out where and Brendan knew that it was last year or the year before, I was just out of horse. And all I could do at that point was walk, and I'm whipping in, so it was tough. But you know, I would let Brendan know, hey, I'm on a horse and I'm just going to kind of stay still for a while, and the other whips are going to have to fill in around me. But quit early if your horse is tired or something's not quite right. You can excuse yourself.
Great, thank you. Other questions?
I have a question, and I apologize if you've already touched on it, but approximately how many horses will you have at the hunt? And then how many will be in the baby horse normally? Like, you know, approximately how many would be in the baby horse area versus the grown-up horse?
Yeah, right. I'll answer that. So yesterday we had 3 or 4 people in what we call the third field. Older horses, older riders, maybe it was a little bit too hot, or young horses. I think a woman named Teresa was on a pretty new horse. So I think we have 3 or 4 people yesterday in the third field. On a typical Sunday, you know, first field is going to have 6 to 12. Second field's probably going to have a little less than that. You know, 4 to 8, and a handful of people in the third field. So 25 riders would be a good sized crowd for us on a Sunday. We're not hitting that yet because we start too early and it's too hot. So our fields have been about half that size recently.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Other questions? So I just want to remind everybody that October 31st is quickly approaching. Please go to the IDCTA website and sign up. I don't, unless you know, Keith, I don't have the exact start time. So I'll make sure that I contact everybody when it's been, you know, decided.
It'll be 10 o'clock at that time of year. Excuse me, it's getting colder. We move off at 10 a.m.
Okay, and so the key thing for everybody here, if you're going to join, don't be late. And when they say 10 o'clock, they mean 10 o'clock. And also, when you come, dress for the weather, because if it's chilly, you know, add more layers. If we have a hot, lovely day, you know, shed some layers, because there's really no running back and nobody to collect your belongings if you get hot or wet or whatever. So dress appropriately and be on time. I want you also to know that the IDCTA will be providing lunch for everybody afterwards. And so not only is part of the hunt the protocol that we've been talking about today, but it's also a social organization. So it's a chance to get to meet fellow horse people and really have a good time. Keith, any last words? Brenda?
I have one thing to add is, yeah, the hounds will move off at 10 that day, but there is a stirrup cup that'll probably start at 9:15. So it's a little social gathering beforehand. So just wanted to, you know, make sure everyone's aware of that.
Yeah. And I guess what I'll add is, you know, I'll give you a quick story about my introduction. I just started riding. My neighbor came over and saw that I bought a horse and asked me to fox hunt. And really, I didn't know anything. And it showed for sure. Brenda probably recalls the day. I think I came off twice. That is not how to start in fox hunting. The way to start in fox hunting is doing exactly what you're doing here. Is listen to this type of a presentation, ask questions, and I will assure you, on the 31st, we will make any accommodation we need to make to hopefully show you a good time, but for sure, make it as safe as possible for you and your horse. So don't do what I did.
Thank you very much, all of you, for being on the panel today. We are going to have this on the website. So anybody who wants to look at the presentation again, it'll be on the website available, and it'll be on the homepage. Under the hunt, there's a big box in the front for the hunt, and we'll put this in there. There's also a possibility, and I'm hoping we can do this as we get closer, of having another Zoom to answer any questions as people begin to get more and more interested as we get closer. So I want to thank all three of you for being here, and I want to thank you, Amy, for arranging this whole thing with Brenda and Keith. And we have time for maybe one more question before we sign off, but anybody have a final question they'd like to ask? Okay,
I'll
then.
make one comment. If you really feel that your horse is not suitable, please, we can connect you with Keith or Brenda. They do have horses available that are used to hunting. So, you know, if it's in your bucket list, but you're not sure your horse wants to do it, there's another option.
I have one
Yeah,
more question.
Brenda, I'll be in to see you.
I have a quick question about second field. So I'm thinking about bringing a group of young riders, you know, all IDCTA kids. If they're in the second group and they don't feel confident about a jump, are they allowed to mix and match and do some of the jumps and go around some of the jumps, or do they have to go all of them?
Oh,
You-
what do you
I mean,
think?
if they didn't feel confident about a jump, do they?
Well, I
have-
think. No, if they're, it's really, if they're insect, I guess it would depend on maybe the field to decide that, but you know, it's kind of hard for the horse behind you when the horse is jumping sometimes and not. And that's the thing at
Okay.
first field, you know, if you want to, you know, I would say maybe have them back at first field to make that choice and let people know, you know, because it's easy to see the go arounds around most of them. I think it's more so if they get confident as a hunt goes on, after a check, they could maybe move up to first field.
Okay, that makes sense.
It's just kind of awkward to the other riders when they're not sure if they're jumping or not, you know.
I think, well, from my past experience, there's enough adrenaline that you kind of go.
Yes, yeah. Well, that's kind of the neat thing about fox hunting for event horses is they see so much that adrenaline just carries them through, you know,
Yeah.
and they go through because of the other horses. And, you know, we've got a lot of creeks in our country and muddy spots. And when the horses just go with the other horses, then when they see it on the event course, it's no big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to have to close down now. So I will again have the things on the web.